Greetings, YouTube. I bought a fancy new die today, so I guess it must be time for a gaming video. And the lights are on, so I haven't done a review on Pathfinder Unchained. Eventually, I will. But there's one thing in the book which has got me thinking, and I want to expand upon it into its own video, and that is the idea of scaling magic items. Now, the idea of scaling magic items isn't completely new. I did it in second edition. And scaling magic items is built into the DNA of third edition and Pathfinder in the sense that if you have a weapon that's +1, you can add new things to it over time, making it more, giving it more pluses all the way up to +5, and adding on a number of other abilities uh, to expand its power. So as your character gains in abilities, power level, you can have new stuff added in. So you can have a signature weapon that remains with you for a long time, maybe your entire career. So the idea of scaling weapons is very common in the game. And under third edition, I think it was third edition, I couldn't remember third or maybe 3.5, they had the Weapons of Legacy, which was another stab at doing scaling items, specifically weapons. And they paid for them with feats, if I remember correctly. And feats are precious. I mean, there's more feats in Pathfinder than there were in third edition, but still, they're precious. And I don't necessarily know if I like the idea of having to spend feats to essentially do the same thing you can achieve just by throwing money at a mage to make your weapon better. So, or in the case of, for example, a soul knife, it's built into their character class. Their weapon scales with them any way they want to. So the idea of scaling items, which is the Pathfinder chain expands it to all kinds of magic items, is interesting and solid, but there's a major flaw in it, in my opinion. Now, imagine that you've got someone that's created the lowest level bag of holding as soon as I can. I don't know what level that's, like fourth or fifth, I think. I think it's type 1. I think there's like 4 or 5 types of bags of holding. I forgot to look it up. I apologize. And you make it, and it's useful, of course. It's a bag of holding. Everybody can use a bag of holding. It's one of the most generic universal magic items there is. Just don't throw it into a portable hole. And as you get older, more experienced, higher level, you can get more of the same, or you could build better ones. You can do multiples of them. Now, the idea of the scaling item is that if you find a scaling item at, say, 4th or 5th level, as you gain in character classes, the power of the bag increases. It has a larger capacity, more volume, more weight, so it comes with you. Again, kind of tying in the idea of having a signature set of magic items. Very video game-like in that aspect. Now, so that you don't get something for nothing, when this item is created, it has to be created at its highest potential level. So the magic user or the mage or whatever that makes this thing is making it at the top tier. So whatever it's a 4th or 5th level bag of holding, they have to spend the top tier amount of money and skill checks and spells and all that crap to create this item. That when held by a low level person will have less power. Why would you do that? What would compel any mage to create an item that will become less powerful if you hand it to a young person, which is kind of the real world way of scaling power in a game? No one talks about levels. I mean, you can have levels in the sense that, okay, some ranks and things like that in your class, or like the Hierophant and the Druids, things like that. But in real life, gaining levels isn't like gaining belts in martial arts and dans when you get the black belt. So it's pretty much age is one of the great judges. You say, okay, young guy's going to have less life experience, so he must be lower level, kind of thing. So if the mage has a type 5 bag of holding, and he hands it to his 2nd level page, suddenly that bag of holding is a type 1 bag of holding. So what happens to all the crap that's in it? Say the mage has got it full of cannonballs. He hands it to his page, the cannonballs just suddenly spew onto the ground. I mean, yeah, very Keystone Cop, Laurel and Hardy. It'd be funny the first time it happened. But is that what happened? Because suddenly it doesn't have the same capacity as it did 2 seconds ago when the mage had it in his hand? And why would you have spend that kind of money to hand it to someone? It's gonna an item that's gonna be less useful to someone of a lower level. Why would you do that? And what's the in-world justification for an item that scales with you? What, you gain more life experience or more, your soul is more powerful, and so you're fueling the item and making it more powerful as you go? Well, how come it doesn't work for every magic item? Maybe every magic item in the world, the scaling is scaling item. But again, why would mages create items at top tier that will function at base tier when you hand them to a second level page or retainer or newbie or whatever you want to call it, apprentice? What would compel you to do that? So there's a major hole in this concept of scaling magic items. Now, I still love the idea of scaling magic items. I think it's awesome. And I think the Soul Knife is a really great example of a class that pulls this off wonderfully. There's a number of psionic classes that, oops, I'm knocking crap over. There's a number of psionic classes that have that scaling ability. There's a number of other, magic classes. The Warlock is a good example. Um, but that isn't reflected in the way most classes are developed. They don't scale that same way. They can maybe have more options and they can do more pluses and bonuses and things like that, but they're not adding their skill to an item. And I'm baffled why someone wrote this, and they did a lot of work on this. Don't get me wrong, and it was well presented. But did no one notice this? Did no one question this? That you have to make it at the highest level, and yet when you hand it to a second level apprentice, suddenly it's at the base level? And what happens to all the crap in it? I'm just talking about Bag of Holdings here, but you get the idea. You get this awesome +5 sword of frost giant slaying dragon charming or whatever, and you hand it to your page, and suddenly it's a +1 sword. Awesome. As he gains in level, all the abilities that it has built into it will begin to appear. Great. But it's still just a +1 sword, even though it's worth 350,000 silver pieces or gold pieces or whatever. I always do silver based currency. Sorry. So I'm just confused. Can someone explain it to me? Did anyone else notice this when they read the book? I can't imagine I'm the only guy that read this and thought, eh, that doesn't make sense. Because to me, it doesn't make sense. So let's talk about scaling items. Can you think of a way that scaling items would make sense? Is spending feats the only way to do it? Because that at least is an internal game explanation. You're unlocking the powers by coming to learn new mysteries by spending your feats. Okay, that kind of makes sense. But is there any way else to do it? Do you have to have classes built around this? Do you have to have dedicated things like the Soul Knight customized to a particular type of item or something, which would seem very narrowing and annoying to run and probably not fun for anybody. So yeah, I don't know what the answer to this is. I'm hoping somebody else does.